Okay. Let's see here. So try to pull you guys up so I can see what you're seeing. Oh, man. Okay, so today we are going to take a... We're going to take a pattern right here, and we are going to make a pattern for it. So if you have ever taken a quilt block and set it aside, or you've seen a quilt block that you like and you don't have the pattern for it, I'm going to show you how easy it is to take that block and figure out how to reverse engineer it. Okay? So, with this block, this is a bear paw pattern that I made. Okay? So, when I was doing this, I wasn't following a set of directions. Okay? I just have my own design, my own size. I just went off of whatever I cut. Okay, so now how I would go about this is these 4 pieces are all the same size, okay? So how you would start out is I would measure and get a ruler or whatever. I'm going to get a smaller ruler here, a little square. Okay, so I'm going to measure this square first, okay? So this square measures at, what's that, 4 3/4? Okay, so I'm just going to make 4 3/4. That's what it measures at. But we know we have to add, in order to get the raw shape, we got a 1/4 inch seam on either side. So that's going to be plus a half. Okay, so that's going to make this a 5 1/4 block. And I'm going to say raw, meaning as you cut it out and it hasn't been sewn yet. Okay? So can everyone hear me okay before I continue on? As long as everyone can hear me, we'll be alright. Now, so when doing this, now I know with this pattern, I need these squares need to match up to this square when they're sewn together. But we're going to go with, I just picked this block up and now I want to know how to make it. So we've measured this. This is going to be 5 1/4 as we cut it out. So that way when it's sewn, like it is now, from here to here is 4 3/4. That's our sewn. This is our sewn dimension. Okay? This is our raw dimension. This is as we cut it out. So we're going to do the same thing. Now, something to consider on this outside block. This has not been sewn yet. So this isn't a good square. This is lopsided because we still have that 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? So keep that in mind. That's why this looks funny. So that's important because when you go to make your, when I go to measure this right now, this is measuring at 2 and we'll call it 3/4. 2 3/4, okay? But now, because I'm measuring and there's only one seam, this side is the only one that has a seam. So we're only going to add 1/4 inch. So 2 3/4 becomes, and here's how I'm going to do this. I'm making this a real easy key here. Equals 2 3/4. Plus, I'm only doing 1/4 inch because you only add the 1/4 inch to where your seam is. And I only have a seam on one side here. So plus 1/4 equals 3. 3 inches raw. Now, when you come to half square triangles, there's 100 different ways to make these, okay? You can start out and do the easy 8 method, or you can do where you make them one at a time. So I'm not going to get into how to make half square triangles. There's a bunch of information on how to do it. They're easy to do it. But the key here is you need to have a 3-inch half square triangle to set up. And we're going to need 4 per section. Okay, so we'll write here, for this whole bear paw block, we need this times 4. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4 times 4. These half square triangles, we need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So times 16. Okay, now we have the same thing in the corner. Okay, we have the edge here is not sewn. Okay, so I'm not going to add 1/4 inch to that. I'm only adding 1/4 inch to over here because that's where our seam's at. Okay, and this should be the same size, right? Because this is a square. So our square is 7.5. Okay, from here to here. But really, we've still got 1/4 inch out here, so it's really going to be 7 3/4 square before you sew all this jazz. Okay? So is everyone following me, or do I need to explain anything? If you're following me, give me some thumbs up. If I need to explain anything, then write your question in the comment, and I will be happy to clarify anything that I need to clarify. Okay, so that takes care of this. That takes care of the half square triangle in our little corner here. And I'm just going to do like this and make it the smaller square, okay? So that's also 2 3/4 plus 1/4 equals 3-inch raw. We need 4 of those for our block, 1 for each corner. Okay, so that takes care of these 4 sections here. Okay, so now I want to find out how big the sashing is. Okay, so I'm going to measure, and this, as you can see, is not super accurate, but we're going to say what it should be. Okay, so this is going to be 2 inches. Alright, and I'm going to draw just like this, because this is going to be easy to see. Equals 2 inches. Okay, so now we have a seam on either side. Alright, so we got to add 1/4 here and add 1/4 here. So, if we add 1/2, that equals 2.5 raw. Okay, so we're going to need we're going to need one for here and one for here. One for here, one for here. Okay, so that's going to be times 4. Okay, now, we already know that this is 2.5 and this is 2.5. So our little cornerstone here is easy to figure out. That should be 2.5 square by 2.5 square. Okay? 2 by 2. Plus we need the half in each direction. Plus the half by half. Now that looks like algebra, but it's not. So 2.5 by 2.5, and that's just 1. 1 per block. Okay, so now how this block would be assembled. Okay, we can tell it's just rows. Like this, and then like this. So, to make this section, to make this quarter, first you're going to cut this block here, okay? Remember, we said this was 5 1/4 before we've sewn anything to it. This is 5 1/4. Okay, now we're going to take our half square triangles and we're going to sew it to one side. Okay, so now we're going to take these 3-inch half square triangles and we're going to sew them. These are going to be separated, so we're going to take 2 and sew them together. So this one to this one, and that'll give you one piece. And then you'll sew this to this block. Okay, so now it'll look like this. Now you have all this as a piece. Okay, now for the bottom part, you're going to sew these 3 together. So now you'll have this piece, and then you'll have this piece, and you sew this together. Okay, now you have that quarter of your block. And you're going to do that times 4, whatever your fabric is you're using, whatever design. Maybe these are all the same color, maybe they're alternating like mine is. However you're doing it, make these blocks according to your fabric and your color design. Okay, so now once we have these 4, we're going to take a block and sew it to the sashing. Now, your sashing needs to be this is 6 3/4, so it needs to be 7 1/2 because we have a seam here and we have a seam here, so we need to add half. Okay, so that, however tall your blocks turn out. And now these numbers, they may not work for you to recreate exactly, because I'm kind of doing some rounding, because when I made this, I was using an older machine and my stitches weren't quite as exact, but this gives you an idea on how to do it. So I'm going to measure from here to here on this block, and I'm going to add a 1/2 inch. And that'll give me enough for this seam allowance and this seam allowance. Alright, so then we're going to sew this block to this sashing to this block. And we're going to do that again for the top section. Okay, so now you'll have 2 of these. Now, how I did this section was I made my 2.5 inch centerpiece, and I took my 2.5 inch strip and my 2.5 inch strip, and I sewed them together. And then when I was putting this block together, I lined up this black tile right here. And then I sewed to try to get that as even as possible. Okay, and then you're going to press everything. Every time you put a piece together, you want to press it nice and flat. Okay, so now we have this whole section connected to our center sashing, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to lay this over, give it some nice stitching, put it together, iron everything out, and there you go. Okay, so it's the same process. You can do this with any block. That's all you have to do is you measure it. Okay? Measure it, and if there's a seam, wherever there is a seam, you have to add that 1/4 inch. So at 4 1/4, I know this is going to be, 4 3/4. I got to add one here, so I know this is a 5 1/4 inch block to cut out. Okay, this little medallion here, tile, is 2 inches. So I know this is a 2.5 by 2.5 cut out. It'll finish at 2 when I sew it. Okay, and then you just have to look at your block and simplify it basically into rows. You can generally figure out how you need to do it. So when I look at this, I know I've got 4 sections. This is the biggest, so I know I'm going to start with this. This is a whole row. So I'm going to start here, add these 2. Well, in order to add these 2, I know I got to sew this one to this one and add it. Then I got to sew these 3 together. Add this row to this piece I've made. Do that times 4. Now to make this row, I'm going to take this big piece, sew it to this sashing, and then sew this big piece to that sashing. Now we've got this big section. So now I've moved up here. Now I'm going to take my center tile and sew my sashing here and sew my sashing here. Now I've got that piece. Now I'm going to sew this to this section. Now I've already made this section here, and it's the same as this right here. So I'm going to do what I did here and do it again here and sew that. And now you have that block. Okay? So that's it. Kind of an easy little lesson. I only bring that up because I started making this and it's been put away, and I didn't use a pattern. I just cut out a block. I actually just cut this section out here and decided we're going to go however big this needs to be, and that's what we're going to do. So that is how, when I'm ready to make these again, that we are going to do it. Okay, easy enough. Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching. And I guess that is all for today. And I'm going to fold this up. And that's it for today. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.